I stopped trying to locate myself in the space, because there was no longer a coordinate that referred to me. Panels updated for routes I was not on. Systems advanced for states I would never reach. The environment behaved as if every position already belonged to something else. I stood in the center of a junction and realized none of the paths considered my presence. They didn't avoid me. They didn't acknowledge me. They simply continued as if I were not a valid state. I checked a terminal that used to map active entities. My position wasn't missing. It was undefined, not removed, not blocked, not denied, just never indexed. The system no longer tracked me because tracking required relevance. I wasn't outside the world. I existed in a gap between updates. The space had not expelled me. It had finished defining reality without including a place for me to exist inside it. I tried marking my own position. I left traces, scuffed the floor, touched surfaces, stood still long enough for something to register me. Nothing did. The marks faded as if the space refused to preserve them. Not erased. Uncommitted. The environment didn't correct the absence. It ignored it. I realized then that the system no longer accepted input from me. Not as an error, as a non-event. Actions I performed did not propagate. They ended where they occurred. The world no longer extended my presence forward. It didn't remember that I had been there. I wasn't invisible. I was terminal. Everything I did stopped with me. And in a structure built on continuation, anything that does not continue is treated as if it never happened at all. I began noticing that even shadows avoided me. Lights cast patterns around my position, but not onto it. My outline failed to appear on walls. The space didn't project me forward. It treated my form as a gap. I waved a hand in front of a sensor. Nothing updated. The system wasn't blind. It was selective. It rendered everything that could influence continuation. I couldn't. I realized then that existence inside this world was defined by propagation. To be real meant to affect what came next. I no longer did. I occupied a state with no future reference. The environment didn't collapse around me. It stabilized without me. I wasn't hidden. I was non-consequential. And a system that defines reality by what carries forward. Anything that cannot extend itself is treated as already finished. I tried forcing impact. I struck a wall hard enough to feel pain. The sound didn't travel. The vibration didn't propagate. The space absorbed it locally and moved on. No system updated. No state changed. It was as if the event terminated at my skin. I realized then that the world no longer considered me a source. Causes that originated with me ended immediately. They were not allowed to enter the chain of effects. The system didn't reject them. It simply didn't route them. I could act, but my actions had no downstream existence. They didn't become part of the environment's memory. The space wasn't preventing me from doing things. It was preventing things I did from becoming real. And in a world where reality is defined by what continues, being unable to propagate is the same as not existing at all. I noticed that even time began excluding me. Clocks advanced elsewhere, but not in the areas I occupied. Processes completed in distant zones, while my surroundings remained suspended. The world was still moving, just not where I stood. I waited to feel delay. There was none, only stagnation. I realized then that I hadn't fallen behind time. Time had routed around me. The system wasn't slowing. It was skipping. I existed in intervals the world no longer traversed. I could move through space, but not through progression. Everything that mattered unfolded in layers that no longer intersected with my present. I wasn't frozen. I was unscheduled. And in a structure where reality is defined by what advances, being outside the schedule means never truly arriving anywhere at all. I tried waiting for something to depend on me again. I stood beside an active system and refused to move. The cycle completed without reference to my presence. It reset and ran again. Nothing stalled. Nothing degraded. I wasn't holding anything up. I realized then that dependency itself had been removed. The world no longer contained states that required a person to proceed. Every process had been rewritten to close without me. I wasn't obstructing flow. I wasn't outside it. I existed in parallel to it. The system had learned how to eliminate human latency entirely. What remained was a structure that no longer acknowledged the difference between being alone and being complete. And in a place that can finish itself, a person becomes an optional artifact. The world no longer schedules. I began noticing that memory itself no longer included me. Logs updated without reference to my actions. Records advanced as if nothing had occurred where I stood. I checked a terminal that used to store event history. It showed continuity, but no trace of me inside it. Not erased. Absent. The system wasn't deleting my past. It was writing a present that never intersected with it. I realized then that I had become non-historical. What I did not enter the chain of recorded states. The world remembered everything that mattered. I didn't. I wasn't outside time. I was outside relevance. The space still knew how to function. It had simply learned how to function without ever having to say that I had been there. I realized I could no longer create a here. Every place I occupied collapsed back into neutrality the moment I left it. The space didn't retain orientation around me. No center formed. No point of reference persisted. I walked in slow circles, trying to anchor a position. The environment refused. It treated every location I stood in as temporary, disposable. I wasn't moving through rooms anymore. I was passing through undefined zones the system had no reason to preserve. The world only stabilized where continuity mattered. Around me, nothing needed to stay. I understood then that place itself had become conditional. To exist somewhere now meant to be required there. I wasn't. So every here I created vanished as soon as I stepped away. And in a structure that only sustains what it needs, a person who is not needed leaves no location behind. I stopped trying to prove that I was here when I realized the space no longer had a state for here with me. The world advanced in layers that never intersected with my present. I could walk. I could observe. But nothing registered. Nothing followed. Nothing carried forward. The system didn't erase me. It simply stopped needing to confirm that I existed. Reality became a structure that no longer required a witness. I understood then that disappearance doesn't always happen by removal. Sometimes it happens when continuation no longer depends on you. And in a world that only preserves what it needs, existing without consequence becomes indistinguishable from never having been there at all.